Going into round 6 of the Sinquefield Cup, there was a 5-way tie at the top of the tournament, but things changed after this round. Let's take a look at the game between Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces and Sergei Karjakin with black. Now I'm kind of interested in this opening because I recommended this system with black on one of my DVDs. This is it's starting out as a Nimzo Indian, but we've transposed into a variation of the Catalan where black plays an early bishop b4 check, and instead of blocking with bishop d2, knight c3 played. This is quite an old variation played by Caruana. It was popularized in the 1970s by the Soviet grandmaster Oleg Romanishin. But others played it as well. So it involves a gambit. You can see that because the knight is on c3, it's not so easy for white to recover that pawn on c4. So here, for example, Romanishin used to play with rook e1 and go for a big center with e4. Now, there were ways around that were found for black, and then theoretically black is doing okay here, and the other main moves here are a3 and bishop g5 as well. But Caruana played a tricky move here, queen a4. Looks rather unusual. You know, what's this queen move about, going to the side of the board? Looks a little bit strange. Well, one of the points is that it actually slows down black's queenside play. So for example, if black plays rook b8 here with the idea to play a6 and b5, then white can play a very funny move, queen b5, which physically prevents the pawn moving to b5, and then you just come around and take this pawn. And yeah, think it's like an improved Catalan basically, because the knight on c6 blocks the c-pawn. So that's one of the ideas of the move. If a6, then knight e5, and there's a slight problem with the bishop here on b4. It's being undermined by the knight on e5. The most popular move here is knight d5. I mean, it's not such a common variation, and I think, well, this leads to double-edged positions. You can see that basically white for the moment is a pawn down, but is going to get a big center. Yeah, it's very double-edged, but well, no doubt Fabiano had done his homework on that one. But this whole line seemed to throw Karjakin, and he spent almost 20 minutes here on playing bishop d7. Now, in the Blitz event, there was a game between So and Anand, which actually went queen c2 in this position. But Caruana played bishop g5 here, which does look a little bit better. Now, there's this interesting potential discovered attack on this diagonal here, and black can actually use that, and this is probably the best way for black to play. So taking on c3 first, and then playing knight d4, which looks a bit scary. We'll see an attack here, but white comes out of this a little bit better because this bishop is not well placed on d7. This is always the problem with these Catalan positions, that white's bishop is better than black's if black mishandles things. And here white can recover the pawn, and yeah, white is obviously a little bit better here there because the bishop and the queen are more active than black's. And again, Karjakin invested some time here and played a5 to support that bishop. But this doesn't look so good, because after this exchange, now that's important because having dragged the queen over here, the bishop is unprotected, so it's pinned, and so these discovered attacks don't really work. a3. Yeah, if the knight comes here, then that can be taken, and then the queen is on. And obviously, if knight takes, then we've got simply queen takes bishop, and white is a piece up. So again, after another 10-minute thought, so Karjakin investing a lot of time, he exchanged on c3. The queen came back to protect the bishop, but now simply queen takes c4. Caruana has recovered that pawn, and he's got a nice solid center. He's got a space advantage. Now, when your opponent has a nice pawn in the center, it's very important to be able to attack that, to challenge that central control with either e5 or c5. But here it's very, very difficult for black to achieve that, because obviously the c pawn is blocked by the knight. Very difficult to get in e5 for the moment. And this bishop, as before, is not well placed. This bishop on g2, a much stronger piece. So the outcome of the opening has been very successful for Caruana. He has a clear advantage, not a huge advantage, but a very pleasant space advantage. It's very difficult to challenge that. Here white could just play e4, but knight d2. Fabiano plays very steadily. He spent 16 minutes over that move, opening up the bishop's diagonal. Knight a5 and queen b4, so just getting the queen out of the way, and rook a7. Well, it's not a beautiful move, but this is not a beautiful position. Don't like the rook there, but I have to say it's very difficult to find decent alternatives. This is just a poor position for black. And I like the way that Fabiano plays this. He doesn't rush things in any way. That at least is a bit of an achievement for Karjakin, exchanging off that poor bishop on d7 for the bishop on g2. Nevertheless, white still maintains a very pleasant space advantage, and yeah, this pawn advancing, if we could get this pawn to c5, that would start to break up black's queenside pawns. So Fabiano in complete control here. Very nicely placed rooks, connected rooks, ready to break. Here, well, it's very hard to defend these kind of positions where you have very little space, but this is said with hindsight, but h6 looks like a sensible move to give the king an escape square, because when the position opens up, you don't want to be left with a weak back rank. But that's what happens. Karjakin opens the position with e5, and this does look like a mistake. It's simply too early to do this. It doesn't work out well. White's pieces are beautifully coordinated. He's ready for this push. He advances on. Now, knight a5 is probably better than the game continuation, but this is still very, very pleasant for white. But knight b8 played, which is another inaccuracy, and Fabiano played c5. Now, it's possible that Karjakin somehow underestimated this move. Perhaps he wasn't expecting this to come so quickly, because it does allow black to simplify everything in the center. So, you know, Caruana is giving away this central control, or at least central control with the pawns. But this is a really good decision from Caruana. He exchanges his advantages. So basically what he's doing, well, we'll see in a second, he's exchanging this space advantage with the pawns for beautiful piece play. Now, first of all, some tactics. If pawn takes pawn, then we can see straight away the weakness of black's back rank, and rook b8 and mate next move. So after c5, rook a5. The queen comes back to b2. Excellent square, looking at the pawn on e5. So if rook takes, then we can exchange and simply take on e5. And once again, back rank problems. It's not possible to take here because of the tactics, because of the rook looking at the knight, the hapless knight on b8. Queen takes d5 played. Fabiano exchanges on b6 and plays knight c4. So you can see he's got no pawns left in the center, but his pieces are beautifully coordinated, and this knight attacking the rook, also looking at b6, also looking at e5. And dare I say it, black's rooks are split, which is a tactical weakness. Also, the knight on b8 is a tactical weakness. And these pawns here aren't very secure either, and yes, weak back rank. So, for example, let's see. Well, I mean, white has already lots of threats here. I suppose the most basic threat is simply to take on b8 and exploiting the weak back rank. So black has problems. If rook takes, then, well, same as before. Mate on the back rank. If rook c8, which I suppose is the most logical move, connecting the rooks, then white has a really powerful move. Again, exploiting the problems on the back rank. Knight d6, beautiful move actually. Cutting off the queen's support for the rook here. So the connection is broken. Obviously that knight can't be taken because of problems here. So let's see what happens. Rook takes rook. Queen takes knight, threatened. That knight obviously can't be taken because of problems on the back rank. Rook goes in here, and now great move, knight c8, threatening the knight on b8, not a beautiful piece, but also threatening knight e7 check, forking king and queen. And black is in huge trouble here. If, for example, queen b3, we can give a check and play a really nice move. Queen d6, threatening here with a discovered attack. And then queen e5, and once again knight g6 threatened. White is in total control there. Or queen d2, let's try this one. Hitting the rook looks better, but still, rook c7. Simply threatening to take that knight. Now, if this, now you've got to watch out for perpetual check, but white can get over that problem with queen d6. And if there's a check, then the king just comes back. d1 is covered by the queen. And then there's the threat of knight e7. White is winning that position. So black basically has to exchange. And this is a beautiful endgame for white with active rook and knight and both pawns vulnerable. Black's piece is absolutely dreadful. Should be a technical win. Coming back to this position, obviously Karjakin is under massive pressure. He played f6. And unfortunately, that is just a catastrophic blunder. Difficult position, but I think this move shows that Karjakin is just not on form in this tournament. Tactically, it looks horrible because of the split rooks, trademark, hashtag, whatever. And also, you know, this diagonal is exposed to the king. There's actually more than one way to win here, but Caruana chose the very simplest, and simple is good in chess. Keep it simple. A skewer. So black has to play queen takes rook. We take the queen. And now, I'm afraid, with black's disparate forces, it is completely lost. There's no way to coordinate here. For example, if rook c8, then we've got queen e6. Thank you. Double attack. And if rook takes knight, let's win that rook again. And there's just no way to hold everything together. Queen against rook and knight is already, well, winning. Well, when you have an extra pawn like this, it's impossible for black to deal with the a-pawn, to coordinate his pieces, and to defend the king side. I mean, this is an utterly hopeless position and very, very easy to play. So I'm not surprised that Karjakin decided to actually resign in this position. A very convincing victory for Fabiano Caruana, and that brings him into the lead in the Sinquefield Cup after 6 rounds. He has 4 out of 6. And then we have 4 players on 3.5. Carlsen, Groshuk, Mamedyarov and Aronian. So still incredibly tight. 3 rounds to go. Now we have a very interesting situation on the live rating list. Carlsen's still number 1 with 28.35. Caruana now in second place on 28.28. Only 7 points behind Carlsen, and Mamedyarov is now on 28.20. They're getting closer to Carlsen, and in the next round, in round 7, Carlsen and Caruana play. If Fabiano manages to win that game, then I think, could be wrong, but I think I'm right in saying that actually Caruana would leapfrog Carlsen and become number 1 on the live rating list. So in any case, all to play for. The eyes of the world will be looking at Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana in this next game anyway. But that thing with the live ratings adds an extra bit of spice to this game in round 7. Do check out my reports coming later. Do check out the playlists and indeed my previous reports on the Sinquefield Cup. Can Fabi do it? Let me know. Tell me what you think. Thanks a lot.